Hello, fellow readers. 'Tis I, the Rumple-One. If you're a prepper, Deep Survival, Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why by Laurence, Gonzales. This is definitely a must-read book for all my fellow preppers out there. You've got some true stories in here. It talks about brain psychology. And in fact, it made me realize something. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I've been on a quest for about a year now discovering why it is when I go to a store like a Walmart or Big Five and I get drawn to that knife counter when I've got more knives than I need. I'm really understanding it's because the way our brain is formed. You know, it's not just one brain, but it's a brain on top of a brain on top of a brain. And what he's saying in here, in this book Deep Survival, is that sometimes when you go back and they analyze, you know, a survival situation, emergency situation, an accident, and they see the bodies and they talk to some of the people that did survive, or you wonder, you know, why somebody would do something that they knew better. It's because of the way our brains are formed. You know, there's one part of our brain that acts quicker than the other. And if we don't get that part in check, if we don't have that consciousness and those skills developed, that's why people do things. And you ask the question, what were they thinking? The answer is they weren't thinking. But their brains were working the way they were designed to, because, yes, we're human, but we're still animals. I do have some quotes to read because this book is just chock full of information, and I'd like to share it with you. And let's start with page 51. Because the system is designed to work without the assistance of logic or reason, there's now an answer to the question, what were they thinking? They weren't. The whole point of the system is that you don't have to think. I just explained that. That's why some people do what we say. What were they thinking? They weren't. They were just acting. So now that you know this, you can realize that, hey, you have to get that impulse under control. Page 53. Most of the mystifying accidents that happen in the course of risky recreation, the seemingly illogical decision, actions, and outcomes can be explained by the same interplay of emotions and cognition that shapes all human behavior. What the scuba divers did made perfect sense from the point of view of the organism's survival. The impulse to get air is automatic and be overpoweringly strong. Those who can't control that impulse to survive live. Those who can control that impulse to survive live. Those who can't die. And that's the simplest way to explain survival, whether the venue is night carrier landings or being lost in the jungle. In other words, sometimes scuba divers panic and they pull out their breathing apparatus because that's that prehistoric brain telling them what to do, but your training has to override that because that's your air. Let's move on to page 64. So, information from the senses takes a neural route that splits. One part reaching the amygdala first, the other arriving at the neocortex milliseconds later. Rational or conscious thought always lags behind the emotional reaction. Anyone can demonstrate this at home. Everyone has been startled by someone. It's a powerful response marked by the familiar rocket rush of adrenaline, increased heart rate, flushing, and panting. Then as soon as you realize the person is someone you know, the response de-escalates. But it takes a while to metabolize all those chemicals. It's a powerful emergency reaction and completely illogical because you know the person and are not in any danger. But the reason you can't think of that logically before reacting is because the visual signals reach the amygdala first. It's a big shadowy form. It could be a spouse or it could be a bear. You don't know. Only later, in milliseconds, does the visual cortex piece together an accurate picture that lets you in on who it is. Only later can you reason. No bears in this house. Once again, impulse. And that's why they put those sugary snacks right there at the cash register in the checkout line. Impulse buy. Because it's just like that. Before you can get control, oh yeah, I'll take a pack of gum, or I'll take those mints, or I'll take that candy bar. Impulse. Let's move on. Page 70. Everyone is familiar with finding something right under my nose. A faulty mental model is part of the explanation. It's the reason you can get off an elevator on the wrong floor. It's the reason that many card tricks and magic acts work. You see what you expect to see. You see what makes sense, and what makes sense is what matches the mental model. If you do succeed in finding your copy of Moby Dick, your pupils will dilate at the moment you recognize what you're looking for, as they do when you reach the solution to a mathematical problem or see something you like. So in other words, if you're looking for something but you don't have the right model, then you might miss out on information that could save your life or prevent your death. And that's one of the problems that a lot of people have in survival situations. Let's move on to page 82. Psychologists who study survival say that people who are rule followers don't do as well as those who are independent, who are of independent mind and spirit. When a patient is told that he has 6 months to live, and he has two choices: to accept the news and die, or to rebel and live. People who survive cancer in the face of such a diagnosis are notorious. The medical staff observes that they are bad patients, unruly, troublesome. They don't follow directions. They question everything. They're annoying. They're survivors. So you see, people like me who don't follow the rules survive. But not all the times. It's one of those things you have to know when to break the rules, when to bend the rules, and when to follow the rules. The choice sometimes is a matter of life and death. Page 84. Just one sentence here. Trivial events begin to shape an accident long before it happens. You know, if you're aware of recent events here, you know across America, been getting hit with snow and ice. There are people just going about their days, get their car like they always do, and these trivial events such as not taking along warm clothes, blankets, space blankets, tarps, rain gear, might cause them to die. It's just something trivial, something that they probably know that in the back of their head they should do, but they don't. You know, not taking along a knife, a lighter, a flashlight, just these trivial little items that you could put in your car could be the difference between living or perishing. And it's these people that do these things because, you know, nothing happened before, so they just keep rolling the dice the same way, as opposed to just taking 5 minutes and putting these items in the car that they may never need. But, you know, as your mom or dad probably taught you, it's better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it. Just part of being a prepper, survivalist. Let's move on. Page 86. The sight of another person who is injured or dead, especially someone you know, can elicit powerful emotional changes well known among search and rescue workers. Rescue fever. It is a common human reaction to do something foolhardy and even life-threatening while trying to help others. When the World Trade Center collapsed, a man tried to swim from New Jersey to Manhattan to help. He was picked up by a ferry boat captain. See, once again, you got to keep your wits about you. You got to think things through. I mean, you just can't just run off and do things that might kill you. The other person might already be dead or dying or severely injured. Sure, you want to help them, but, you know, we're taught in the CERT training that, you know, our safety's first. We don't want to become another victim. We don't want to add to the problem. Moving on to page 95. Like I said, this is a really good book. The word experienced often refers to someone who's gotten away with doing the wrong thing more frequently than you have. Let me read that again. The word experienced often refers to someone who's gotten away with doing the wrong thing more frequently than you have. See, sometimes experience breeds bad habits. It hardens the attitudes. Now, just because it worked the last time doesn't mean it's going to work this time. You have to be aware in the moment. Doesn't mean you throw out everything you learn, but sometimes you have to adapt. And those who adapt survive. Those who don't die. It's that simple when it comes to survival. But a lot of times, those grizzly old veterans, you know, with lots of experience, they won't listen and they perish. I mean, how many, you know, rescuers with decades of experience have been buried? It's just something to remember. Page 115. Even with unimpaired thinking, there's no guarantee that things would have gotten any better. People routinely fail to realize that an accident not happening is no guarantee it won't happen. As Scott Sagan puts it in The Limits of Safety, things that have never happened before happen all the time. Unfortunately, as Perot comments, it is normal for us to die, but we only do it once, which is too bad, for it might be the ultimate learning experience. That's kind of funny. I only chuckle because it's true. But you see, a lot of times people do things, stupid things, and hey, nothing happened, so they'll do it again. But they're just rolling the dice. You know, it's like running a red light. You can do it 100 times and nothing happened, but that 101st time, you could be flattened by a semi. It's a stupid thing to do. It's like, knock it off. Don't take unnecessary risk. I mean, I know if you're a prepper, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but sometimes you have to take a hard look at what you do and stop doing it because you're taking an unnecessary risk. And finally, one last quote, jumping all the way through to page 263. I believe everyone should learn about basic survival skills and the survivor's frame of mind because they come in handy when the trappings of civilization or even the financial or emotional support that we take for granted drop away for whatever reason. Instructors at survival schools are finding that more and more business people are taking their courses, not because they want to survive in the wilderness, but for the other qualities that grow out of knowing how. Here are a few suggestions, first for staying out of trouble, then for dealing with it when it comes. You see, he talks about the trappings of civilization, such as electricity. Once again, with these snowstorms, ice storms, people have been without power. You know, just a couple of 100 miles from here, people were without power for a day or two. Snowstorm. They weren't prepared. Snowstorm hit, no power. No power, no money from the banks, no gas from the gas pump, no food from the food stores. You've got to be prepared. It's just that simple. And this book's Deep Survival, like I said, is a definite must-read, I think for everybody, but especially for preppers. It is a good book. And Vinny, thank you for recommending it.